stop spending, and school districts say it has cost them millions of dollars. So the bottom line is, what used to be a very reliable and predictable source of income has now become very volatile based on the mood of the economy. Here's the question first to Representative Haley. Do you support changing or repealing Act 388?
I think Act 388 needs to be studied with everything else, and yes, I think it's one of those things that we're going to have to look at. If we're going to do comprehensive tax reform, we have to look at everything on top of the way the Department of Education spends and the way that education funding formula is devised.
So you are willing to consider changing it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what we saw was the plan of Act 388 was initially meant to help primary homeowners, but the result of that was it hurt businesses and it hurt investment people. What we need to make sure of is the legislature said, oh, but we'll take care of them next year. The biggest lesson learned was there never is a next year in the legislature. If you're going to do it right the first year or don't do it at all.
Well,
you know a lot about running a business. You talk about that a lot. You cannot effectively plan and budget if you do not know how much money you're working with. You know, a lot of these school systems, they look at their current funding at the beginning of the year, and because of this, it changes throughout the year, and they have to do cuts at different points during the year. I mean, looking at education as a business, you know, is that sound business?
What is sound business is that we need to reform our education funding formula. I was born and raised in a rural area where we didn't know what we didn't have, in Bamberg. Then I lived in Orangeburg, where they spent more time on discipline than they ever did teaching in the classroom. Now I'm blessed to represent Lexington County, where every public school is like a private one. But you go into my schools in Lexington, and there's a smart board in every classroom. You go into my schools in Bamberg, and they don't have those opportunities. We need to educate children because they deserve a good quality education, and that's our future workforce, not based on where they happen to be born and raised. We've got inequities across the state that have to be changed. When we reform the way we fund education, when we add merit-based pay for teachers, reward those teachers for going into those challenged areas, and then turn around and give teachers bonuses for improving educational standards. It will separate the good teachers from the poor teachers in terms of performance, and it will turn around and make a huge difference in our educational standards in South Carolina.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up before we move to Congressman Barret, and just a yes or no. You are, though, definitely willing to consider changing Act 388, even though many Republican legislators would view that as a tax increase?
Absolutely. If we're going to do true tax reform, you have to include it in there. We can't say, no, we're not going to touch that. It's important.
Okay, Congressman Barret, do you support changing or repealing Act 388?
I think the problem in the past, Ben and Judy, has been we have taken a rifle shot approach, so to speak, to our taxes. Act 388, the grocery tax, the sales tax, the cigarette tax. I think we've got to look at our tax system holistically, how we can come up with a system that's fair and that's flatter, that is more sustainable and more accountable. And I just think that's important if we're going to budget like you're talking about. You know, I've also talked with Hal Clyburn, who's a dear friend of mine, who's on the forecaster, the budget forecaster board. We need to take a look at how we budget in South Carolina. What about doing something totally outside of the box? Have a budget freeze 1 year and totally do something different where we actually know how much money is in the bank before we actually allocate it. That may be a different way of looking at something, but at least we don't have to go back during the middle of the year once, twice, maybe even 3 times and say, we're going to have to cut your budget again.
So as it relates specifically to Act 388, are you willing to change or repeal it just so that voters are clear?
I think we need to look at everything holistically, and that includes all of our taxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is from a viewer, Ms. Haley. Brent White asked the question, with teacher salaries being cut and the National Board program being slimmed down, what would you do to keep the best and the brightest teachers in our state, especially in the rural areas?
You know, the amazing thing is in business, when we see revenue fall, we always cut from the top. You never cut the core of the people that need it the most. We should not be talking about teacher furloughs. We should not be talking about teacher layoffs. What we should be talking about is that we have 1,000 people working at the Department of Education, or that we have 85 school districts. What we need to make sure is that if that money's not going to the teacher, student, and technology in the classroom, it is not going to the right place. That is what we need to be talking about. And right now, that has not been the issue. And until we realize that we are too top-heavy in this state, we have got to do merit-based pay for teachers. When they go into those challenge areas, we need to reward them for it. When they improve educational standards, we need to give them bonuses just like you do in business, because we will separate the good teachers from those that aren't performing as well. It will make a big difference. But government needs to get out of the way of the teacher. They need to let the teacher teach, and we need to look at how we pay them based on performance and not sit there and throw tons of things at them and expect them to produce.
Congressman Barret, your ideas for keeping quality teachers in South Carolina?
Well, I do agree with merit-based pay, taking care of our teachers, cutting from the top before we certainly cut our teachers. But it's like our frontline soldiers don't have the resources that they need. My wife's a first-grade school teacher, and I can't tell you the numbers of Sundays when she's packing her lunch. She's got a new pack of paper and a new pack of pencils and a brand new book that she and I have bought for her classroom. The fact of the matter is, for every dollar we spend in South Carolina, only 44 cents makes it to the classroom. I think it's actually lower than that. The national average is 65 cents. Those dollars need to go into instructional classroom needs, where they are most needed. Our teachers on the front line. I said it earlier, we can streamline that process. We've got 46 counties, we've got 85 school districts, and 64 different funding sources going into that plate of spaghetti. We can streamline that process. We've got 4 educational budgets in South Carolina: EIA, EAA, EFA, and First Steps. The business person in me says, you know what? 1 makes more sense than 4 if we want to make a difference in education.
Thank you very much.
Next question. Of course, this is a story that got a lot of attention here on WIS when we covered it. The state recently purchased used school buses from another state, it's actually Kentucky, with the aging fleet of buses that become more unreliable as the miles are added on and cost more to, of course, maintain. What is your solution to make sure our children are transported safely and on time?
You know, the amazing thing is we are the only state in the country that does not privatize our school bus system. The government should not be in the business of maintaining and having school buses. Every other state in the country factors that out to some other company, and so what happens is you've got good quality buses that have air conditioning, that if they break down, someone's quickly there to do it, that are brand new, that we don't have to deal with it. That's the problem with South Carolina, is they're trying to be all things to all people.